Right, so here's some friendly advice for those people that are a long way away and might be thinking of doing the job themselves, or people that are a long way away and maybe not quite sure whether to come or not. It could just be in an instance where you drive all the way to us, all the way down the M1, and you get here and we say, yeah, that was easy, we could have just unblocked that pipe for you. So there might be some checks that you want to do before you come, and it could even get to semi-professional or even professional level. So, there's some garages out there, local garages, you might be able to get it done by, save you coming all the way to the other side of the country. So this is for you guys. Right, so safety first. You may have had one or two lights come up on your dashboard. Sometimes it could be the airbag light, for example. That's because probably there's water getting into some of your electronics. Now, you need to be aware that sometimes this can be a little bit more serious than you think. If your airbag lights come on, then it's very unlikely that the airbag will be deployed in an accident. So you need to get that checked out. It might be that you do decide to drive it. I can't say for sure. We can't advise you whether to or whether not to. We can't diagnose something from this distance away as to whether you got water there or not. But usually, just as a few tips, if you've got a little bit of water on the carpet, you might be thinking, it's a little bit wet. If you can't see where that water's been coming from, the chances are it would have been filling up from underneath. So there's a good chance that underneath that carpet there might be one or two electronic boxes, and one of them could be the airbag control box. Now, to get to it, you've got to get the seat out. So there's a plug under the seat, and you've got to lift the seat up and out. Get somebody to help you do that. You unplug it, get a torch under there, unplug it, lift the seat out. 4 bolts usually. Get the seat out, get the trim off, and get the carpet up, and then you'll see where the water is, and then potentially where this unit is. If it's in water, obviously at that point you need to dry it and get get a suction machine, pull out the water and dry it all, and then obviously fix your leak and do all that. But if that is in water and it's the airbag control unit, you need to be aware that that can't just dry out and go back in. We wouldn't advise you do that, because it might all work and you might be able to reset it, but you don't know what it's going to do in the future. The same goes that if you speak to your dealer, you might be able to phone parts department and talk to them. Sometimes they're very helpful. They'll tell you what it is, and it could be you could buy one and get into your dealership once you've dried it all and fixed it, and get that and change that unit, and then they'll reprogram it, maybe half an hour's labour or something, and they put a new one in, a dry one, and reprogram it, and off you go. Okay, so something else that might go wrong. Some customers have been here with radios and amplifiers and that sort of thing. So you might choose to dry one of those out, because obviously at that point, if it all starts to work, then worst case scenario, you could be driving down the road and your stereo goes off. So you could then just get the new unit. But obviously, if it's anything safety related, then you need to do your homework and make sure that it's not something that could cause problems for you or indeed the next owner later on down the line. So, I can't tell you every electronic box, but what I can tell you is that water does cause these problems, so you need to be able to deal with it. Right, so mould. Most people don't realise quite how serious it is. Sometimes it can be very bad for you. I've had 1 or 2 people ring us over the years while they've been ill, and they haven't put the connection together. We had one lady called us and said, I'm so ill, I can't get to you, can you deal with my car? I've been off work for so long. And I personally was the one that went to get it, and she came to the door, just gave me the key past the door. She was in a terrible mess. And when I opened the car door, I saw why. The car was full of mould, and she'd obviously just about got better and went back in her car again. So, you breathe the stuff in, and people think, it's in the back, it's on the seat belts, it's wherever. But, it gets into you. If you was to bash a cushion in your lounge and the sun's beating through the window, you can see all this stuff floating around. And that's how it gets into your system. So you're breathing it in and it gets into your nostrils, and you know, even one of our guys was ill once and the doctor sent us a warning because he was ill and it was a mould related, and we hadn't taken it as seriously as we should do. So cars with mould in, we completely blitz them with a product called Formula 429, which is made by ChemSpec, and it's an award-winning product. You can blast the entire interior. You'd have to buy a trigger spray, but we've got machines for it, and you know, we'll get right under the carpets as well once we've got the carpet up and all the mouldy horrible water and, you know, all your seat belts and that, and you have to clean it off as well. And you know, you've got to be aware when you're cleaning that you can't get it on your body and, you know, breathe it in. It goes on the seat belts. It can often go on anything that's organic, and it usually grows when a car's been parked for a couple of weeks. So those of you who think, oh, it's all wet and I'll leave it and I'll deal with the car when I come back from holiday, it's the worst thing you can do. So you need to be aware that mould can be unsafe, and you know we've seen it on our cheese, but doesn't mean that that it's all right. You know, it can be a bit like mushrooms and toadstools. So to clean it off, if you can't get the Formula 429 that we use, it's, you know, it's a safe product, you can use it on anything. You need to, if you're going in the shops to buy some, you need to be aware that you want the one without the bleach in it. The bleach can be labelled up as peroxide, so read the label, because obviously you don't want to be spraying bleach around. So if you're going to clean it up, you might just have a little bit of mould on one or two seat belts. You need to clean it off properly. You can't be driving along with the window open and thinking it's not going to get to you. It whirls round in the wind. We've had one or two people said to that to us in the past, well, I'll just drive it to you. And I've had people get out the car and say, oh, I've just driven here with the windows open. You know, you've got to get it out the car, clean it properly, and if it's bad, then you need to, you know, be aware we can pick the car up with a lorry. Our lorry driver will drive to you, and he's got a mask himself. He'll put that on, drive your car onto the lorry, and then we'll get your car here and we'll decontaminate it. Immediately it gets here, we blast it with the antimicrobial product and kill the mould, and then you know, and then it make it safe to work on. Okay, so finding the leak. There are three kinds of main leak, we categorise them. You've got the basic leak, which is something that may be something you can do yourself, block pipes, or you know, debris blocking something usually, or it might even be leaking you know, somewhere like the scuttle area underneath the bonnet. Sometimes you get all the debris in there, and they block the outlets to that area underneath, and so it spills inside. That's one. The other one is inherent problems to the car. So that is when potentially that specific car has those kind of problems. So you might be able to find those online, and it could be typically a Clio or that has sunroof problems, and the Corsas have problems under the pedals, and Golfs have problems under the bonnet for where the pollen filter housing are, and you know, they're typical problems that are relative to the car. The last one is quirky problems. We call them quirky problems. They can be a bit more tricky. That could be welding. Car could have been involved in an accident and there's a weld broken, or it could be right behind the dashboard. It could be that we've had them in the past where the car's got to be parked on a slope for the water to get in. We've had them before where you've got to park the car with 2 feet up in the air, sort of that sort of angle, and you know, we've had the door panel off and the water runs down on the outside of the door and zigzags inside the door, and then will go on to a speaker housing, like the dome bit on the back of the speaker, around that, and then finds its way into the door. And if you park the car flat, it won't come in because the water's dripping past the cowling inside the door and out of the drains at the bottom. So they're quirky ones, and I could tell you some stories of all sorts of quirky leaks over the years. So they're a bit more tricky and probably left to the professionals, and you know, we do a lot of those. Right, so we'll start with the first one, unblocking gullies, debris, that sort of thing. So let's use an example of the sunroof. You've got a pipe that comes from the sunroof and goes down the A-pillar and into the wheel arch. So you've stood on the seats, you've got the sunroof open, you're looking down at the gully, and there you are, you've got a little jug of water. and you're pouring it into the recess area and seeing where it goes. It should ideally run to the corner and down the A-pillar on a pipe, and then down into the arch. So if you get a friend to look in the arch while you pour it, you should be able to see it go down and spill out, and then try the other side. And some cars have got them at the back as well. So at the back you can't really get to them very well, so you have to drop the headlining down to get to those. So might involve your local garage, but if you think that's the problem, you can see the water's not going away with the car parked with the nose up, then you might be able to get a garage to get the headlining down and do that kind of thing. A couple of tips on here. You need to make sure that you don't unblock it inadvertently and not realised that you've actually sorted out your problem, and you don't know you've done it. So what I mean by that, let's use a different example. Say you're at the back light and there's water in the boot and you think it's coming in through the back light. Don't unscrew the back light, clean it all up, put it back. What you've got to do is, if you think it's coming in through the back light, take some padding off, get somebody inside the boot with a torch and pour water on the outside of the back light with all the tailgate closed, and make sure you can see it dripping. And then somebody shout, yeah, it's coming in, and then you take the light off and see where it's coming in, and be careful not to wipe away any evidence of where water might have been running. So at that point, then you can put the light back again, and then when you sealed it that it's not coming in again. So going back to the first two, the basic water leaks, unblocking pipes, all that kind of thing. You can often find help on the internet. You might get it on Google, or you've got you've got YouTube and some forums, and sometimes somebody will say unblock the pipe. So when you're unblocking that pipe, you've got to be careful not to push the pipe off. So if you're poking something down the hole in the corner trying to unblock it, or you're pushing air down, a lot of garages do this, to get an airline and push the airline down. Oh, that's all clear, the water runs away, but you're not realising that they've actually put pressure in that pipe and it's come off somewhere. Potentially it's come off behind the dash somewhere. So you've got to be aware of that. You need to be careful not to push the pipe off, or check the pipe is good at both ends of its connection. Sometimes you might have to take the trim off to get to that, to make sure the pipe's clear and unblocked. Okay, so drying the interior of the car. Most people underestimate the amount of water in the car in the start. If it's not dripping and if it's got in the boot, you can see where it is, and if it hasn't spilled over the threshold into the car, then you can dry it out in the boot. Yeah, that's relatively easy. If it's wet on the footwells, sometimes it can be both sides. Then the whole carpet, usually we take the whole lot out, get the seats out, and it's a major job, get the whole lot out, get the underlay up. If it's only on one side, sometimes you can undo the seat bolts, and you've got to get the plug out from underneath the seat, and then you can lift the seat out. You need someone to help you do this, and you need to cover the door panels, sheet them up so that you don't mark anything when you get them out. Once the seat's out, then you take the trim off and get the carpet up. You'll be surprised how much water can be under there. The older cars, little old cars, sometimes the underlay can only be maybe an inch thick, or sometimes an inch or two in varying places. But a more modern car with the foam, you'd be quite surprised. It could be 4 or 5 inches thick in places, and you can have several gallons of water under there without you realising. Some of those big Audis, you can have 4 or 5 gallons, or 20 litres for those of you from the metrics. And it can be quite a job to dry them. You've got to get a suction machine there, pull out as much water as you can, and then get a blower under there. In the old days we used to use a fan heater. We've got 3-phase dryers now. We've got blowing pipes, and you put the pipe in there and turn the heater on and blow 3 powerful hot air. We've got 8-inch pipes, and even that can take a number of days of blowing to dry it. So obviously you can dry it, it just can take some time. A couple of tips on that. One is, if you unplug that seat, as long as you don't turn the ignition on, then sometimes you can put the seat back in, and then the car doesn't know the seat's been out, if that makes sense. But if you've turned the ignition on, some people do, you think, oh, I'll undo the window or whatever I'm going to do. The car senses that the seat's been out, and then the airbag light comes on, and then once you put it all back together, you need to be able to turn the airbag light off. If you think you're going to buy a unit to turn it off, they don't all work. If you go on the internet and buy one for 30 quid, then it won't work. I can tell you that you can't buy them for £30. They'll just tell you your airbag's on, but it won't help you turn it off. You've got to have something professional that will actually plug into the system, recognise that and turn it off. So, you know, most garages have got them. They charge anything. I think we charge about £15 to do it, but some of them charge you know, a bit more than that. Sometimes they plug it in and just switch the airbag light off. They'll check it, of course, the system does that, but, you know, you've got to be aware that, you know, if the airbag light's on after, that could be that. Another reason why, of course, the airbag light might be on, of course, is the unit or something's got wet, and, you know, that needs to be replaced. We talked about that earlier. So here's 4 things you need to remember. If you're going to unblock something, make sure that you clean up the debris and it's not going to all block it up again. So that's one. Number 2 is don't ruin your evidence. You know, if you're going to take a light off or something, check that it's leaking first. And remember the little water trails and little bits of evidence there, so don't wipe it all clean and think you're doing a good job. You need to see where that evidence is. There could be more than one water leak, that's another one, so don't think you folded your arms, good job for the day, you found it and fixed it. Go back to the drawing board, check it and make sure there's no water. Water often ends up in the same place, so if you've got a leak and it's coming in through the door panel and you've done all that and taped it and fixed it, it might still be getting to that floor from another way. And lastly, there's always more water than you think, so obviously carpets, get them up, make sure that you dry it properly, because it's very deceiving. People, you know, they think it's going to dry on its own, or put some blower on it or the heater, and you've got gallons of water under there. It will never dry. I mean, we've had cars back 8 months later and they're still wet. One more little tip, if you're parking the car with the nose down and the water's down at the bottom at the front of the footwell, doesn't mean to say that the water's coming in from the front, so that can throw you out. Often it could be that it's coming in from the back or from the roof or anywhere, but it always finds its way to the lowest point. So I wish you all good luck with that.